What a sudden change of events. Peter has just confessed his faith in Jesus. This is the very next thing that happens after last week's gospel, when Jesus asked, "Who do people say that I am? Who do you say that I am?" And Peter, inspired by the Holy Spirit, says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And then, not hardly a few steps later, Peter pulls Jesus aside, and Jesus doesn't call him Peter, the rock. He calls him Satan, the accuser, the deceitful one. "Get behind me, Satan. You are an obstacle to me." Why does Peter rebuke Jesus? Jesus asks them, "Who am I?" And Peter responds, "You are the Messiah. You are the Son of the living God." Now, Peter was able to understand what that meant, but then he wasn't. Because in his mind, he thought that a Messiah was a conqueror. He thought that a Messiah was a victor, someone who was going to come in and be powerful and be strong and be a ruler. He was going to be a new king. I think many of the disciples, many of the people that followed Jesus, saw him as being that, or the one who was going to make everything better. And then when Jesus begins talking about, I'm going to Jerusalem, and there are people there who hate me and are not going to accept my message, and they're going to persecute, and they're going to arrest, and they're going to beat, and they're going to kill. And I will be killed there. Now, I think you and I would probably align ourselves with Peter and say, okay, if the bad guys are over there and they're going to kill you, then why don't we go this way? That seems logical to us. It makes sense. Don't go that way. That's dangerous. Go towards the path of safety, of security, of convenience, of comfort. And Jesus tells Peter to stop, because that is the temptation. I'm sure he thinks that. We hear him pray against that temptation in the Garden of Gethsemane. "Lord, I really don't want to go through with this. If we could do this any other way, but your will be done." And Peter is encouraging him to walk away. And Jesus knows that's a temptation for him. He knows it's a temptation to be that kind of Messiah. "Don't you think I could call upon legions of angels and they would be here at a moment's notice?" He will later tell his apostles. He will later tell Peter, when Peter whips out the sword and tries to fight off those arresting Jesus. "Don't you think I could do that? But I don't. I don't do that because I didn't come here to beat people up. I didn't come here to knock people down. I came here to lift people up, to heal what is wrong with this world. And that's what's wrong with this world. It's not so much that God desires the death of his Son. I think it's wrong when we try to paint it in that mentality, or when we try to explain the cross in that way, that God desired the death of his Son, and he sent his Son to die. "Okay, Son, you're going into the world, and I'm sending you to die." That's not at all what God wanted to happen. We see that in Jesus. It's not what he wanted to happen. What God desired was the complete and total giving of himself. Because that's what God does. God completely and totally gives himself. It is a free gift of the Spirit. It is utter vulnerability, total openness before one another. That I am going to be myself regardless of what you think and do. And I am going to give myself regardless of what you think and do. And that's what Jesus was going to Jerusalem to do. I am going there to give myself, to be true to who I am, to be the one who loves and heals and calls for mercy, regardless of what they do. And I know they're going to reject, but that doesn't mean I change what I'm going to do. I know they're going to arrest me, but that doesn't mean I stop being true to myself. I know they're going to kill me, but that doesn't mean I change my tune. I came to give myself fully. That's what the Father desired. He desired a human being who would love and not stop loving, even when people didn't receive that love. And Peter represents the other side of that coin. He represents the human being that is afraid to love. Peter is afraid of what is going to happen. And it's that fear that causes him to stop in his tracks. And it's that fear of what's going to happen down the road that he says, Lord, let's not go there. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what's going to happen to you, and probably more so, I'm afraid of what's going to happen to me being associated with you. Because if that's what's going to happen to you, then it's probably going to happen to us. And I don't want that. Fear keeps us from being good. Fear, I think more than anything else, is what causes people to fall into sin. Because fear is the opposite of love. And love is God. And when there is no love, there is no God, and there can be no goodness. And we fall then into sin. In fact, every virtue, every good thing that we could possibly do, only becomes real when it is infused with courage. Because I could say I am a truthful person, but when the moment comes and I'm not courageous enough to tell the truth, and I fall into the lie, then I'm not really a truthful person, am I? I can say that I am a pious person, and I am a devout person, and then when I'm out eating supper or lunch or restaurant, and I'm afraid to make the sign of the cross because I'm worried what people will think around me, well, then I can't say I'm a devout person. It's an imaginary piety. It's an imaginary truth. Our virtues are imaginary until they're filled with courage and are actually done. Jesus, being the Messiah, would be imaginary if he didn't give himself even when it was difficult. And that's where Christ now tells his disciples, you have to take up the cross. It's one thing to say, I will be truthful, I will be patient, I will be chaste, I will be loving, I will be forgiving, when it's easy to do all of those things. But it's a whole other thing when you're facing the enemy, when you're facing that thing that causes you to be afraid. And we fear many things. We fear rejection. We fear what other people will think about us. We fear pain. We fear suffering. We fear inconvenience. We fear being left out. We fear all of these things. And it keeps us then from being good because fear clamps love and doesn't allow it to be full. God does not desire you to suffer. He doesn't desire you to be left out or to be judged or to be persecuted. Oh no. He desires you to do what his Son did and give yourself totally. Give yourself freely, authentically, your love, yourself, regardless of how that is received, regardless of what the other one is going to do. I can't control their actions, but I can control mine. And that's all we're asked to do. I don't have to change the world. I have to change this person in the world. And if I allow that to happen, then I allow God's Spirit to once again flow through me, not the spirit of Satan that Jesus recognizes today in the fear. The father of lies, the prince of darkness, fear. Get behind me, Satan. And so as you and I come to God's altar today, we ask for the gift of love. Because if we are filled with love, love does not fear. Love gives itself. And so we ask God's love, his charity, to flow through us so that fear will be put aside and temptation and sin will go with it. What good is it to gain everything and lose yourself in the process? Be true to yourself, give yourself completely. That's the message of the cross. It's not about suffering on the cross. It's about loving